What you're about to hear defies everything we thought we knew about cold cases. For 26 years, a family lived in agony, not knowing if their daughter was alive or dead. For 26 years, investigators followed dead ends and false leads. And for 26 years, a little girl who vanished from one of the busiest streets in America was living a life she never chose, under a name that wasn't hers, in a world built entirely on lies. This is the story of Nicole Adams, the 6-year-old who disappeared from Hollywood Boulevard in 1994, and the miracle that brought her home in 2020. Before we go any further, I need you to do something right now. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe in justice delayed but not denied, then hit that like button, drop a comment telling us where you were watching from, and smash that subscribe button with notifications turned all the way on. Your support doesn't just help this channel grow, it helps us shine a light on cases that deserve to be remembered. Don't just watch, engage. Let's build a community that refuses to let these stories fade into silence. The sun was setting over Hollywood Boulevard on the evening of August 14, 1994. It was a Sunday, the kind of warm California evening that draws crowds to the famous Walk of Fame like moths to a flame. Street performers juggled fire. Artists sketched caricatures of tourists. The smell of hot dogs and popcorn filled the air. And somewhere in that chaos, somewhere between the Chinese theater and the souvenir shops selling postcards and plastic Oscar statues, a mother turned her back for just 30 seconds. 30 seconds. That's all it took for 6-year-old Nicole Adams to vanish into thin air. Her mother, Jennifer Adams, had brought Nicole and her older brother Marcus to Hollywood Boulevard as a special treat. Jennifer was a single mother, working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Money was tight, vacations were impossible, but she'd managed to save enough for a day trip to see the stars embedded in the sidewalk, the handprints at the Chinese theater, the spectacle that was Hollywood. Nicole had been talking about it for weeks. She'd circled the date on the calendar in red marker. She'd practiced her autograph in case she met a movie star. She'd picked out her favorite outfit, a white t-shirt with a sparkly rainbow across the front and denim shorts with butterflies embroidered on the pockets. They'd spent the afternoon taking pictures, eating ice cream, watching a magician make doves appear from nowhere. Marcus, who was 9 at the time, held his little sister's hand as they navigated through the crowds. Jennifer kept a close eye on both of them, knowing how easy it would be to lose a child in a place like this. But as the day wore on and exhaustion set in, her vigilance wavered. Just for a moment, just long enough. They'd stopped outside a souvenir shop. Jennifer was digging through her purse for her wallet, trying to find enough change to buy the kids a bottle of water. Marcus had wandered a few feet away to look at a display of superhero masks in the window, and Nicole, sweet, curious, adventurous Nicole, had been standing right there beside her mother. Right there. Jennifer could feel her daughter's presence. She could hear her humming that song from The Lion King that she'd been obsessed with all summer. And then, in the time it took Jennifer to count out $3 in quarters and dimes, Nicole was gone. At first, Jennifer didn't panic. She assumed Nicole had followed her brother to look at the masks. But when she glanced up and saw only Marcus standing there, a cold feeling washed over her. She called Nicole's name. No response. She called again, louder this time. Nothing. Marcus turned around confused, asking where his sister went. Jennifer's heart began to race. She started walking quickly up the sidewalk, scanning every face, every small figure that could be her daughter. She asked strangers if they'd seen a little girl in a rainbow shirt. She grabbed Marcus's hand and started running, calling Nicole's name over and over until her voice went hoarse. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Jennifer ran into the souvenir shop and demanded they check their security footage. She flagged down a police officer who was directing traffic at the intersection. She called 911 on a payphone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial the numbers. By the time the sun had fully set and the neon lights of Hollywood Boulevard flickered to life, a full-scale search was underway. Officers combed the streets. Helicopters circled overhead with searchlights. Volunteers handed out flyers with Nicole's picture, the same picture that would soon be plastered on milk cartons and billboards across the country. But there was no trace of her. It was as if Nicole Adams had simply ceased to exist. The investigation that followed was massive. The Los Angeles Police Department classified it as a Priority 1 missing child case. FBI agents from the Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team arrived within hours. They interviewed hundreds of witnesses. They reviewed security camera footage from every business on that stretch of Hollywood Boulevard. They brought in bloodhounds to track Nicole's scent. They drained a nearby storm drain based on a tip that turned out to be false. They followed up on thousands of leads, from psychics claiming to have visions of Nicole's location to convicted sex offenders who happened to be in the area that day. Jennifer Adams became a fixture on the evening news. She appeared on talk shows, pleading for her daughter's safe return. She sat through countless interviews with investigators, answering the same questions over and over. Where exactly were you standing? What was Nicole wearing? Did you notice anyone watching your family? Was there anyone who seemed suspicious? The implication was always there, unspoken but unmistakable. Could Jennifer have done something to her own daughter? The statistics supported such suspicions. In the vast majority of child abduction cases, the perpetrator is someone the child knows. Often it's a family member, but Jennifer's grief was raw and genuine. Her alibi was airtight. She'd been surrounded by witnesses the entire day. There was no evidence, not even a whisper of evidence, that she'd harmed her child. And yet, the investigation into her continued for months, adding insult to the unimaginable injury of losing a daughter. Marcus, meanwhile, retreated into himself. The outgoing 9-year-old who loved comic books and video games became withdrawn and silent. He stopped going to school. He stopped eating. He had nightmares every night about losing his sister in the crowd, about reaching for her hand and finding empty air. He blamed himself. If only he'd been watching her more carefully. If only he hadn't walked away to look at those stupid masks. If only, if only, if only. The first year after Nicole's disappearance was a special kind of hell for the Adams family. Every knock on the door brought a surge of hope that died as quickly as it came. Every phone call could be the one bringing news. Every time Jennifer saw a little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, her heart would stop, just for a second before reality crashed back down. Birthdays were unbearable. Nicole turned 7 without blowing out candles, then 8, then 9. The anniversary of her disappearance became a day of renewed media attention, fresh appeals, updated age progression photos showing what Nicole might look like as she grew older. But as the years passed, the media coverage dwindled. The tips dried up. The investigation, while technically still active, lost momentum. New cases demanded attention and resources. Nicole Adams became another name in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children database. Another face on a poster. Another heartbreak in a world full of them. Her case went cold. Jennifer never stopped looking. She couldn't. Every waking moment was consumed by thoughts of her daughter. She joined support groups for parents of missing children. She learned to use the internet to search for any mention of Nicole's name. She traveled to different cities based on tips that sounded even remotely credible. She maxed out credit cards hiring private investigators who promised results but delivered nothing but disappointment. Her life became a singular mission. Find Nicole. Marcus grew up in the shadow of his missing sister. He graduated high school, though he barely remembered those years. He went to community college but dropped out after a semester. He took a job at a warehouse, something that didn't require him to talk to people or explain why he sometimes seemed to be a million miles away. He kept Nicole's picture on his phone. He visited the spot on Hollywood Boulevard where she disappeared every year on August 14th, standing there for hours, wondering what happened, wondering if she was still alive somewhere, wondering if she ever thought about him. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. And if you haven't already, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button. Cases like this need to be told, and your support makes that possible. 26 years is a long time, long enough for hope to fade, long enough for most people to assume the worst, long enough for investigators to move on to cases that might actually be solved. But in April of 2020, something extraordinary happened, something that would rewrite everything everyone thought they knew about Nicole Adams and her disappearance. It started with a woman named Melissa Parker. Melissa was 32 years old, living in a small town called Millbrook Springs, about 200 miles north of Los Angeles. She worked as a dental hygienist. She had a boyfriend named David, who she'd been dating for 3 years. She had a modest apartment, a reliable car, and a quiet life that suited her just fine. But Melissa had always felt like something was off. Not wrong exactly, but not quite right either. She had no memories before the age of 7. Nothing. Most people's earliest memories start around age 3 or 4, fragments of birthday parties or family vacations or their first day of school. But Melissa's life began, as far as she could remember, in the fall of 1994, in a house in Millbrook Springs with a woman who introduced herself as her mother. The woman's name was Donna Parker. She was in her mid-40s when Melissa's memories began, quiet and stern and deeply religious. She homeschooled Melissa, telling her that the outside world was dangerous and corrupt. They rarely left the house except to go to church and the grocery store. Donna didn't have friends. She didn't have family who visited. It was just the two of them, isolated and insular, living a life that revolved around Bible study and chores and rules. Melissa was told that her father had died before she was born. She was told that she'd been very sick as a small child and that the illness had caused memory problems. She was told that asking too many questions was a sin, that doubt was the devil's work, that obedience was the path to salvation. And so Melissa learned not to ask. She learned to accept the strange gaps in her past. She learned to be grateful for the roof over her head and the food on her plate and the mother who, while not affectionate, provided for her needs. Donna Parker died in January of 2020. She'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 months earlier and refused most treatment, saying it was God's will. Melissa took care of her in those final months, watching as the woman who'd raised her withered away. On her deathbed, Donna finally spoke words she'd kept locked inside for over 2 decades. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I took you. I'm so sorry." Melissa didn't understand. Took her? Took her where? From whom? But before she could ask, Donna closed her eyes and slipped into unconsciousness. She died 3 hours later without saying another word. Melissa was devastated and confused. She just lost the only family she'd ever known. And in her final moments, Donna had said something that made no sense. Or did it? The more Melissa thought about those words, the more questions bubbled to the surface. Questions she'd suppressed for years. Why didn't she have a birth certificate? Why were there no photos of her as a baby or toddler? Why had Donna been so adamant about keeping her away from other people? Why had they moved to a new town when Melissa was a teenager, changing addresses without explanation? After Donna's funeral, Melissa began going through her belongings. She found boxes of old papers in the attic, things Donna had kept but never mentioned, bank statements, legal documents, and buried at the bottom of one box, wrapped in a plastic bag, a small white t-shirt with a faded rainbow across the front, and a pair of denim shorts with butterflies embroidered on the pockets. Melissa stared at the clothes. They were child-sized. They were old, clearly from the 90s based on the style, and they stirred something in her, a feeling she couldn't name, like an echo of a memory she couldn't quite reach. She took photos of the clothes and posted them on a Facebook group for people trying to piece together their family histories. She described her situation, the lack of early memories, the deathbed confession, the strange isolation of her childhood. She asked if anyone had any idea what this might mean. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of people suggested she might be a victim of parental kidnapping. They urged her to contact the police. They sent her links to databases of missing children. And one person, a true crime enthusiast who'd been following cold cases for years, sent her a link to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children website with a simple message. Does this girl look familiar? The link led to Nicole Adams' missing person page. There was the original photo from 1994, a 6-year-old girl with blonde hair and bright blue eyes, smiling at the camera. There were age progression photos showing what she might look like at 10, at 15, at 20, at 25. And there, in the photo marked age 32, was a face that could have been Melissa's twin. Melissa's hands shook as she scrolled through the page. Missing since August 14, 1994. Last seen wearing a white t-shirt with a rainbow design and denim shorts with butterfly embroidery. Abducted from Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, California. If you have any information, please contact the Los Angeles Police Department. She couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred. The room seemed to tilt around her. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. But the evidence was right there in front of her. The clothes, the date, the face staring back at her from the screen, identical to her own. Melissa called the number listed on the website. She was connected to a detective named Sarah Hoffman, who'd taken over Nicole's cold case 5 years earlier. Detective Hoffman had seen hundreds of false leads over the years, well-meaning but mistaken tips from people who thought they'd spotted Nicole in a grocery store or at a bus station. But something about Melissa's call was different. The clothes, the lack of early memories, the deathbed confession, the physical resemblance. Detective Hoffman asked Melissa to come to Los Angeles for DNA testing. 3 weeks later, the results came back. Melissa Parker was Nicole Adams. There was no doubt. The DNA match was conclusive. The news exploded across every media outlet in the country. A cold case, 26 years old, solved. A missing child, found alive. A family about to be reunited. The story had everything. Mystery, tragedy, and against all odds, a happy ending. Jennifer Adams got the phone call on a Tuesday morning. She was at work, cleaning rooms at a motel, when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, assuming it was a spam call, but something made her pick up. Detective Hoffman's voice was calm and measured as she delivered the news that would change everything. "We found her, Jennifer. We found Nicole. She's alive." Jennifer collapsed. Her CO workers rushed to help her, thinking she was having a heart attack. But she wasn't dying. For the first time in 26 years, she was truly, fully alive. Her daughter was coming home. Marcus was at his warehouse job when Jennifer called him. He didn't believe it at first. He'd trained himself not to hope, not to let himself imagine this scenario, because the disappointment was too much to bear. But as Jennifer repeated the words, he felt something break open inside his chest. A dam of grief and guilt and desperate longing finally giving way to something that felt suspiciously like joy. The reunion happened a week later at the Los Angeles Police Department. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but reporters crowded outside, waiting for a glimpse of the family that was about to be made whole again. Inside, in a small conference room, Jennifer and Marcus waited. Jennifer had barely slept in days. She'd replayed every memory of 6-year-old Nicole 1,000 times. She'd looked at photos until her eyes burned. And now, after 26 years of searching, her daughter was on the other side of that door. When Melissa walked in, Jennifer gasped. It was like looking at a ghost. The face was older, shaped by experiences Jennifer knew nothing about, but the eyes were the same. Those bright blue eyes that had looked up at her that day on Hollywood Boulevard, right before everything fell apart. Melissa stood frozen, overwhelmed. This woman was her mother, her real mother. Not the woman who'd raised her, who'd stolen her, who'd built an entire life on a lie. This was the woman who'd given birth to her, who'd loved her, who'd spent 26 years searching. And the man standing beside Jennifer, tall and broad-shouldered with tears streaming down his face, was her brother. She had a brother. The reunion was awkward at first. How do you compress 26 years into words? How do you explain to your mother that you don't remember her? How do you tell your brother that you don't recall holding his hand that day, that the life you've lived has erased the one you left behind? But Jennifer didn't care. She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around Melissa, holding her daughter for the first time in over 2 decades. And in that embrace, something shifted. Melissa felt it, a sense of rightness, of belonging, of home. The investigation into what happened to Nicole, into how Donna Parker managed to abduct a child in broad daylight and disappear without a trace, revealed a chilling portrait of a disturbed woman who'd spent years planning the perfect crime. Donna Parker had lost her own daughter, Emma, in a drowning accident in 1993. Emma had been 6 years old, blonde-haired and blue-eyed, the light of Donna's life. Her death sent Donna into a spiral of grief and mental illness. She became convinced that God had taken Emma as punishment for her sins, and equally convinced that God would provide another daughter to replace the one she'd lost. In the months leading up to August 14, 1994, Donna had driven to Los Angeles multiple times, scouting locations where she might find a child who resembled Emma. She'd gone to parks, shopping malls, tourist attractions. She'd watched families, studying their routines, looking for an opportunity. And on that Sunday evening on Hollywood Boulevard, she found it. Security footage, reviewed again after Melissa came forward, showed Donna in the crowd that day. She'd been wearing a long skirt and a headscarf, nondescript and easily overlooked. The cameras captured her approaching Nicole while Jennifer was distracted. In the video, which detectives described as deeply disturbing, Donna could be seen kneeling down to Nicole's level, speaking to her. Nicole appeared confused but not frightened. Donna took her hand and led her away, disappearing into the crowd within seconds. Donna had planned it perfectly. She'd parked her car 3 blocks away in a residential neighborhood where there were no cameras. She'd brought a change of clothes for Nicole, a simple blue dress and a hat that covered her distinctive blonde hair. She'd had a story prepared in case anyone asked. This was her daughter, Emma. They were visiting from out of town. Emma had gotten separated from her, and now they were reunited. Wasn't it a relief? No one questioned her. No one suspected. Within an hour, Donna and Nicole were on the highway heading north, leaving Los Angeles behind. By the time the Amber Alert went out, they were long gone. Donna kept Nicole isolated in Millbrook Springs, a town where no one knew her, where she could start fresh with her new daughter. She'd homeschooled Nicole, which meant no awkward questions from teachers. She'd avoided doctors and dentists, which meant no paper trail. She told Nicole that her old life was gone, that her family didn't want her anymore, that Donna had rescued her from a bad situation. And children believe what they're told, especially when they're scared and confused and have no frame of reference for what's true. Over time, Nicole's memories of her life before Donna faded. The human brain, especially a young child's brain, is remarkably adaptable. Nicole became Melissa. The girl in the rainbow shirt ceased to exist, replaced by a quiet, obedient daughter who followed the rules and didn't ask questions. But the truth, as it always does, found its way to the surface eventually. The aftermath of the revelation was complicated. Melissa struggled to integrate her 2 identities. She was Nicole Adams, the missing child who'd been searched for, mourned, never forgotten. But she was also Melissa Parker, the woman who'd lived a quiet life, who had a boss and a boyfriend and a routine. Reconciling those 2 people, those 2 completely different existences, was not easy. Therapy helped. So did time. Melissa, who eventually decided to reclaim her birth name of Nicole, slowly built a relationship with Jennifer and Marcus. They had to get to know each other from scratch, learning each other's quirks and habits and histories. Jennifer had to accept that the 6-year-old daughter she remembered was gone, replaced by a 32-year-old woman with her own life and experiences. Marcus had to forgive himself for not protecting his sister that day, a burden he'd carried for far too long. But they made it work. Families, even fractured ones, even ones torn apart by unthinkable circumstances, have a way of finding their way back to each other. Jennifer, Nicole, and Marcus became a unit again, different from what they'd been before, but no less real. Nicole's story sparked a national conversation about child abductions, about the long-term psychological effects of parental kidnapping, about the gaps in systems meant to protect children. It also gave hope to thousands of families with missing loved ones. If Nicole could be found after 26 years, couldn't others? The answer in some cases turned out to be yes. Nicole's case inspired renewed efforts in several cold cases, leading to breakthroughs that might not have happened otherwise. As for Nicole herself, she wrote a book about her experience, titled The Girl Who Came Home. In it, she described the surreal experience of discovering her true identity, the complicated grief of losing the only mother she'd known while simultaneously being reunited with her biological family, and the long journey toward healing. The book became a bestseller, and Nicole used her platform to advocate for missing children and their families. Today, Nicole lives in Los Angeles, not far from Hollywood Boulevard. She says she goes there sometimes, to the spot where her life split into before and after. She stands there and thinks about the 6-year-old girl in the rainbow shirt, the girl who had no idea what was about to happen, the girl whose life was stolen but ultimately reclaimed. She thinks about Donna Parker, a woman consumed by grief who made an unforgivable choice. And she thinks about her mother, Jennifer, who never gave up, who spent 26 years searching, who loved her daughter enough to wait a lifetime for her to come home. The story of Nicole Adams is a reminder that not all cold cases stay cold forever, that families shouldn't stop hoping, that justice, even when delayed by decades, can still arrive, and that sometimes, against every odd, miracles do happen. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why cases like these matter, then I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. And subscribe to add like, comment, and hit the subscribe button, because we're committed to bringing you true crime stories that deserve to be told, cases that deserve to be remembered, and families that deserve justice. Drop a comment below telling us what you think about Nicole's incredible journey. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for being part of a community that refuses to let these stories be forgotten.